Okay, we're going to begin from Daf Hey Amid Beis. Today's Daf is Daf Of. We left off with an interesting question. The city of Tiberias, the city of Tveria, what status did it have vis-a-vis Purim? Did it have a halacha of a 14 or it had a halacha of a 15? Rabbi clearly held it had a halacha of a 15 because he went through the sugya where Rabbi planted a tree on the 14th because since he was a 15 guy, he was able to work on the 14th, according to one of the terutzim of the previous Gemara. Chizkiah, on the other hand, was in doubt. So when he was Tveria, he would lane on the 14th and on the 15th. What was the shaila predicated upon? When it says, now it says by Batei Arichaima, those are the two halachas that we know that have to do with the cities that were hukaf, that was surrounded by walls, bimei Yeshua bin Nun. Regarding selling a house in a walled city, you have a year to redeem it. Regarding that halacha, Tveria is not a walled city because the din Zabati Ayicharm is Saviv, you need 4 walls around it. The city of Tveria had 3 walls around it, and the 4th wall was a natural barrier, it was the ocean. So what was the question then regarding Purim? After all, it's open on the 4th side. So the question is, when it says Prozim in the Megillah versus open cities, which Prozim means open cities, versus closed cities, does it mean view or does it mean protection? If it means that it's open to view, then Tveria would be an open city because on the 4th side of the sea, you could see in. Conversely, if it means protected, so the sea afford that wall, the 3rd wall, the 4th wall of the sea affords protection, and then it would have a din of Batei Orechoima. So that was the shaila. The pasuk that we brought in, it's interesting. Let's see the pasuk. It's important on page Daf Hey Amid Beis, where it gets wide, 4 lines down. The pasuk says, "The Orei Mivtzar, the fortified cities, Hatzidim, Artzer, Chamas, Rakas, v'Kineretz." So, and Rakas is Tveria. According to this, Rakas is the city of Tveria, and it says that Rakas is a fortified city. Tveria is a fortified city. That's regarding, okay, then we got the shaila whether in Batei Arichaim or not. So now we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up on. I apologize. My phone is linked to my computer. Okay, so we're going to pick it up. We're up to the bottom line of Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara we just said before said Rakas was Tveria. Rakas was Tveria. We're going to see there a difference of opinion. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the bottom line, Ki Avina Talia, when I was a young lad, Amina Milsa, I said something, the Shanil V'Sabe, that I asked my elders, Amid Aleph, V'ishtakech Kavase, and I found that they held in conjunction with me. What was the question that I asked them? Is Hamas zu Tveria, as opposed to the Gemara on the Amid Beis, the opinion was that Rakas was Tveria. Again, we have that pasuk that we're under discussion, and we're going to digress to discuss the cities of Hamas, Rakas, and Kineret. So since we're discussing the pasuk, we're bringing in 1 second. You're taking as a fait accompli that Rakas is Tveria. Guess what? It's not. Hamas is Tveria. V'lama nikra shma Hamas. Why is it called Hamas? Al shum chamei Tveria, because of the springs, the underground heated springs of Tveria. It's Hamas, version of Cham, of heat, chamei Tveria. And Rakas, in fact, is not Tveria, as we said in the previous Amid, but Zut Tzipuri. That's the town of Tzipuri. V'lama nikra shma Rakas. Why is Tzipuri called Rakas? Mishum de medalya kiraksa de nahara, because it's elevated like the bank of a river. Again, Rakas, the lesson of Raksa, the Nahara, the bank of a river. So we just identified 2 of the cities that were mentioned in the pasuk in Yoshua regarding fortified cities. We mentioned the city of Hamas, which is Tveria, Rakas, which is Sipure, and the 3rd is Kineret. What's Kineret? Is Zuki Noiser. So this is for Rabbi Avi fame, that this week's parsha was Parshas Vayechi. Naftali, Ayala Shlucha, right? Hanosei Demei Shafer, that it's describing the fruit that grew in the valley of Ginaiser. The fruit went and got ripened there quick as a deer. And this is again that's Ginaiser. That's the allusion to so Kineret is Ginaiser. Kineret is Ginaiser. The Gemara now continues and says, Amarava, Rabbi is going to disagree with Rabbi Yochanan. Is there a man the who holds that Rakas is not Tveria? Is there any such opinion? Like we had the opinion on the Amid Beis, it's Tveria. Rabbi Yochanan is saying Hamas is Tveria and Rakas is Tzipuri. 1 second, is there anyone who says Rakas is not Tveria? But Kishachiv Inish, when people would die in Bavel, Hacha, here in Bavel, Hasam Safti Lei, there in Chutzlaris, they be maspid them. The Radvaz makes a diakir, fellas, that you see that you can be maspid at Talmud Chacham Shloi B'fanav, because they're making get spade them in Eretz Yisrael when the person's dead in Chutzlaritz, in Bavel, right? So the Radvaz halachically says from here an inference that in fact, when Talmud Chacham Shloi B'fanav, you can make a hesped in a different land. So he says, Hasam Safti Lei Hacha, Gadol Hu B'Sheshach, he was a Gadol in Sheshach. What is Sheshach? Look at Rashi, 2 lines from the top. Sheshach is Bavel, Bechilov Atbash. We know there's a way of, and the alphabet, a play on words. The first letter of the alphabet going ahead and being substituted by the last letter of the alphabet. So, for example, the letter Af would show, Aleph would show up as Tuf. The letter Beis then would show up as Shin. The letter Beis would be Shin. You're going from the first letter and you're replacing it with last letter. So 1 to 26, 2 to 25, back and forth. So Sheshach, it says, would be Bavel, right? Shin would be Beis, and Chaf would be Lamed. So B'Sheshach, he lived, Gadol B'Sheshach, he lived in Bavel. V'sham loy b'Rakas, there in Rakas, V'chimaski aroyna lahasam, and when his Aaron reached Eretz Yisrael, Safti lehachi, here's what they said. Oyavei Suridim, right, the beloved, Yoishvei Rakas, Tsu'u v'kiblu haruge oimek. Go and receive those who were killed in the valley. Now, Bavel is called the oimek because it's a low-lying land. We spoke about Bavel not needing rain because the rain flows into Bavel. But the interesting lashon of haruge, we're speaking about a person that died. Why is he calling haruge a person that was killed? Why are you being considered you killed in Bavel? So the Marsha, he quotes something very interesting. The Marsha says that since you live in Chutz La'aretz, right? If you live in Chutz La'aretz, that you're considered that you killed yourself because you died before your time. The Gemara in Bracha says in Daf Ches, Ikasabi beBavel. Rabbi Yochanan said, are there elders in Bavel? He was wondering, how could there be an old person in Bavel? Why? Because it says, L'man yirbu yemechem al ha'adama. You increase your life al ha'adama, meaning which land? Eretz Yisrael. But in Chutz La'aretz, not. So therefore, by you living in Chutz La'aretz, and you're going to die earlier than you're supposed to, you're considered haruge as if you killed yourself. So fascinating, a fascinating mashah to explain a difficult lashon, the lashomat of haruge. So bottom line is, what do we see? That Rakas is Tveria. That Rakas is Tveria. Kinoyach nafshe the Reb Zera. We're continuing along the lines of the Hespedim. When Reb Zera was about nifter, pasach le'ahu safdana, and they said the following: Eretz Shina Hora v'Yolda. Eretz Shina Babel is Shina. He was there. There he was conceived and he was born. Eretz Tzvi Gidla, but he went up, grew up in Eretz Yisrael. Shashuel was the delight of Eretz Yisrael. He was born in Bavel, but Rebbe Zera went to Eretz Yisrael. Notice, guys, not Rebbe Zera. Very just for edification. A person, an Amoyer in Bavel is called Rav. He never received smicha, so he's called Rav. Eretz Yisrael is called Rebbe Yochanan, right? Rav Ashi. Rav is Rav Ashi, not Rebbe Ashi, Rav Ashi. Rebbe Yochanan. So when it says Rebbe Zera, what do you see? That obviously he was in Eretz Yisrael, because the only order to get smicha, that going back to the time of Moshe, right, it had to be an Eretz Yisrael. Oyno la Amr Rakas. Oy is always lashon of heavens to Betsy, which, it usually means woe, right? So Amr no loy Amr Rakas. Ki of the Klechemda, it lost its precious soul, it lost a special person. So again, the bottom line is, what do you see? That everyone holds Rakas is Tveria. So how can Rabbi Yochanan say Chamas is Tveria when it says Rakas is Tveria? Elo Lashon says Amar Rava, Chamas zu Chamei Gror. You're right. Chamas is not Tveria. Chamas is called Chamei Gror. the name of a place. And Rakas is Tveria, like we thought all along, and Kineris is Uganaisu, like we said earlier. Rakas. Why was it called Rakas? Why was Tveria called Rakas? Shafilu Reikonim Sheba, even the people who are raked there, Malayan mitzvahs karimain. The pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Kepela charimain rakasech, like a piece of a pomegranate is your head. In other words, and a pomegranate we know has a bunch of pits, and it's a myth that it has 613 pits because, trust me, if you go to Costco, you get a good zunta pomegranate versus a small pomegranate. There's a tremendous diversity and amount of pits in there. But anyway, it's a nice myth. But anyway, so the bottom line is it's pomegranates are good for your brain. They're very good. So they compare rakas and lashon of kepelas rakosech, the lashon of rakosech, kerimain, that you like a remind. Okay. So even the rekonim, even the empty people, the rakes in Tveria were like a pomegranate. They were full of mitzvahs. Rabbi says Raka Shema. Its name was Raka. It wasn't Tveria. Its name was Raka. In other words, according to the first lashon, its real name is Tveria, and we're trying to figure out why it's called Rakas. According to this, its real name is Rakas. So we have to figure out why it's called Tveria, which is his real name. It sits in the Tibur, guys, is the belly button. It's the navel of Eretz Yisrael. It's the center of Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, it's called Tveria, the lashon Tveria, like middle. Rabbi says Rakas, his name, its real name is Rakas. It's good to look at. Look at Tosfos. Why is it good to look at? Shahayu Sham Ginois upardesim, because there was found Ginois and Pardesim, and therefore it was a very good place to look at, and therefore it was called Tveria. So we have machlokes. According to this, we're concluding that Rakas, at least now, that Rakas is according to Rabba and Rava, is Tveria, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's Sipure. Whether its real name is Tveria or the name is Rakas is a subject of dispute, and yeah, either way. And why would you bring this in? Because this was listed as one of the Bati Arichaima, Bimei Yeshua Binun, and that's how we got into this digression. Amar Zeira says Zeira, Kitroin Zut Sipure. It's not, Rabbi Yochanan said above that what? That Rabbi Yochanan said that Rakas was Sipure. Rabbi Zeira disagrees with that. He says Kitroin is Sipure. Why was Kitroin called Sipure? It's on the top of a mountain like a bird. It's a very high place. Says the Gemara, Kitron Sipuri here. How can you tell Kitron is Sipure? For Kitron the Chelka Shel Zavulin Have. Kitron was in the Chelik of Zavulin. Dichsiv Zavulin loy Chayrish es Yoshvei Kitron ves Yoshvei Nahalo. Now the guys is a mitzvah is Sechayik Kol Neshama. When you went into Eretz Yisrael, you're supposed to kill out all the inhabitants. We weren't supposed to live with them because of the fact that the hashpa of being over there by the Zara. We sent, in fact, there were 3 proclamations sent. They were sent either, leave, stay and be indentured servants, or I forgot the third one. We'll kill you. I don't care. I guess I would go to war. Right? That's the easy one. So it seems that Zvulun didn't take care of the people of Kitroin and the Halal. They made them pay. We actually said they made them pay taxes. Now, it's as we're going to see. Here's the logical flow. Zvulun was unhappy with his chelek. You're telling me that Kitroin is Sipure. Kitroin was in the chelek of Zvulun. Sipure, we're going to show, is a very hush of a place. So if Sipure is a very hush of a place, and it's called Kitroin, and Kitroin is in Zvulun, so why is Zvulun unhappy with his chelek? L'chayri, he has the town of Kitroin, which is Sipure, and Sipure is a very good chelek. So why is he unhappy? Right? Umizulin Misrayim al midasav habe. What Shenemar, the pasuk says, Zavulim am cheref nashay lamus, and the end of the pasuk speaks about Naphtali, because Umarayme Sada Naphtali, Al Marayme Sada Naphtali. So now, my tam, what's the reason why was he complaining? The Naphtali Al Marayme Sada, because Naphtali he was on in the high fields. Amar Zavulun Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom. La'achai nasati lehem sades ukramim, v'li nas naharim gavoyis. To my brothers, you give what? You give fields. You give, and to me, you give what? Mountains. La'achai nasati lehem aratzos. You give land. V'li nasati yom and horis rivers. Amalei Kadosh Baruch Hu said, Kulan tzrichin l'chal. Everyone's going to need you al yedei chilazin. They're going to need you for the chilazin. Shenemar, Amim har yikra'u usefune tumune choil. Right? That Amin, they call the people to the mountains, and usfune, the svune, these things that are going to be hidden in the stand, which I guess are the chilazon. Tana Rabbi Yosef, svune zu chilazon. That's the chilazon. Tumune zu tiris. What's tumune tiris? Look at Rashi, guys. Tiris, dag. It's a dog that what? That's called tunina. It's a tuna fish. The tuna fish is going to be in the chelik. Hey, look, it's fascinating. Rashi says tunina. It's a tuna. Then the chelik of it's going to be tuna. Next, and chayil zuchuslavan. They had sand in Zevulun's chelik to make white crystal. So the chayra, you're complaining you don't have fields. The chayra, be happy. You got the chilazin. You got the chilazin. You got what? You got the tuna fish, and you got what? And you got and you have the chayil for white crystal. So to digress from a digression, instead of waiting to Menachos, when next time we're going to have the sugya of chilazin, there is a big discussion what the chilazin is, whether it's a kosher animal or not kosher animal, whether it was a fish, anyway, according to this, right now it's broken down to two possibilities. The Radzina Chasidim say it's the cuttlefish, which is a type of squid. And having gone to the chilazin factory in Eretz Yisrael, Steve, you could take a picture. This is the Murex trunculus. This is the snail that lives in this thing, and this is its back. And according to popular opinion, when you see most of the people wear tcheles, it comes from here. It comes up, and it's so ostensibly it was in the chelik of Zvulun. So be happy. This is very expensive. It only came up once every 70 years. We can of course go down and get it. But again, so that's Zvulun was unhappy because he saw the agriculture that was taking place in Naphtali. We saw that Naphtali had the best. He had the biggest genoiser, the valley genoiser, he had the best produce in not in Eretz Yisrael, the best produce in the world. Guys, if you have bread and peiros from genoiser, the Bisur Masechta Brachas, the peiros genoiser takes precedent over bread regarding brachas. That's advocate dekach. It satiates so much. It's a fantastic thing. Anyway, so we have this peiros genoiser. One second. Very strange. So if anyone steals my tuna fish or my chilazon, who's going to tell me? So you're giving me this good stuff and you're pacifying me, but who's going to tell me if they take it? So 1 second. It says Sham Yisbechu Zivchei Tzedek. They're going to go ahead and shech Zivchei Tzedek. Simin Zeyeh Lechad, there'll be a simin. Anyone who takes something will be paid. It's not going to help. They're not going to go ahead. They'll never have any hana from this, right? Look at the second Tosfos. Just like a korban cannot be bought from stolen, so therefore, if they go ahead and steal from you in any which way, they won't have any nachas from that. So therefore, if they do steal, they're going to see they're not going to have any nachas. So over time, I'm sure all possible theft will stop. So don't worry about it. Okay, the bottom line is we're leading up to a question in this digression, right? You said that Kitron is Tzipure. We established that Kitron is in the chelik of Zvulun, and V'yisal Kedaitach Kitron is at Tzipure. Amay Misrayim Al B'Daisef. Why was he so unhappy? But Havi Tzipuri Milsa Dadifa Tuva. That Tzipure was an unbelievable place. So if it was Kitron, and Kitron, as we established, is in the chelik of Zvulun, why was Zvulun so unhappy? You possibly say, I'll give you a few possibilities. Why he was unhappy? The less they buzz Zabas Cholu Devash, because he didn't have land, which was Zabas Cholu Devash. Now, this is a fascinating Rashi, guys. The land of Zabas Cholu Devash, look at Rashi, the Lashon of Rashi. Zabas Cholu Devash, Ha'izim Oichlim Te'enim, the Izim, the goats, they would eat figs. V'hadvash noitin mehem, and the devash would go ahead and drip from the figs. V'hacholov zov min ha'izim, and the milk would flow from the izim. V'nasa k'min nachal, and it would make a nachal. That's the chol of devash. That's, again, we don't have that anymore. But when it says eretz zavas chol of devash, it's referring to the dripping of the devash Rashi says te'inim. I would think tamarim. I think we see date honey rather than fig honey. But Rashi says te'inim, and so therefore, so you're going to tell me what he had land, but the slave wasn't chol devash. 1 second, I'll show you that Sipuri had incredible zavas chol devash. Reish Lakish says, "Lididi chazi li zavas chol devash Sipuri." I saw that. Babi shish esei mil al shish esrei mil. It was 16 mil by 16 mil. They do the math over here. It's between 9 and 11 miles, a large amount. Maybe he does have the what? He has zavas chol devash, but it's not as much as his brothers. I saw all in sum all the call of the zavas chol devash. Kubi. It was like the distance between Bei Kubi and Akra the Tulbakni. Till the Akra is the port, the Tulbakni. And there, and how far was that? Esther v'tartin parsei orcha. It was 22 long. Upus yeshisa parsei and 6 wide. So if in Ganson it was 22, and he had, that's parsa. Parsa is 4 mil, and he had 16 mil per. You know, he had a ganz fine geschmack amount of what in Ganson of all. Also, why was he unhappy? So obviously, so you can't tell me that he wasn't happy. He should have been very happy. He had zavas chol devash, and you tell me he didn't have enough. He certainly did have enough. And filahachi saw the sukram madifalei. And finally, you know why he wasn't happy? Because he wasn't happy with zavas chol devash. He wanted to have fields. He wanted to have land. And dekanami dechsiv v'naftali amaroi misadeh. Says Naftali was in the high place in the land. When he saw this, right, shmami no, that's what got Zvulun what? That got Zvulun upset, that Naftali had this. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is that we see that the Kitron in fact was Sipure, and it wasn't the chelik of Binyamin of Zvulun, and nonetheless Zvulun was not happy. Amravo for Ekron Teaker. Since you're speaking about cities, the city of Ekron, it should be uprooted. So Kesari beis Edom shahaye sheves be hacholias. This is what? This is Caesarea, who is the daughter of Edom, and lives among the sand. It was a constant problem of Yisrael in times of what? Of Hanukkah. And they were victorious. They called it Achidas Migdal Sher. They called it the Achida, the Migdal, the Tower of Sher. Amrav Yosi. So we're discussing Ekron. Amrav Yosi Bar Chanina. Ma'idech Siv Basiroisi Damav Mipiv. I'll remove his blood from his mouth. V'shikutzav mi ben shinav. Disgusting things between its teeth. Usually shikutzim is avodah zara. V'nisher gamhul elokeinu, and will remain for Hashem. Basiroisi Damav Mipiv. Said base b'maya shalahem. That first the base b'maya. It's a type of avodah zara of the goyim. Shikutza be ben sheinav also. What's that? Zeh beis galia shalahen. That it's also a type of avodah zara. However, nishka gam holokenu ela bati knisses bati midrashi shebe edom will have the left over is the shuls and the base measures of Edom. For you ke'elef b'Yehuda v'Ekron kibusi. It'll be like what an officer in Yehuda and Ekron will be like Yehusi's Yerushalayim. Elu tatiyas v'kakiyas shebe edom. That the tatiyas, the theaters and the circuses of Edom. Shasidim Sadi Yehuda Lami B'Tayr Barabim. In the future, they're going to Tayr Barabim. Fascinating Taisus over here describes that Taisus says there was a hassle of Avodah Zarah, and the question whether you can make a hassle of Avodah Zarah into a shul, right? The shaila, the halachic shaila. You see from this Gemara Pashas that you could. Amr Yitzchak Leshem Zu Pamayas more Ekron. It's discussed as Leshem. The town of Leshem is Pamayas. That's known as Banyas in Eretz Yisrael. Ekron is Teaker. Ekron should be uprooted. Zu Kesari Beis Edom Shi Oisab Machapali and Shemalachim. This is a place where a lot of kings met. Ikad Yami the Marbi Ba'Machi. The kings were raised there. Ikad Yami the Mukmi Mina Machi. That doesn't say they were appointed there. Kesari V'Shlayim and Yamlecha Adam Chor V'Shteim. If someone tells you it's Assyria and Yerushalayim that they're both destroyed, Al Taman, don't believe it. Yashu V'Shteim Al Taman. If they're both settled, don't believe it. Chorva Kesari Yashu Yerushalayim or Chorva Yerushalayim Yashu Kesari, then Taman. If one is up and one is down, either one, then believe them. Shenemar, because it says Imola Hacharava, right? Imola Hacharava. If one is full, the other one will be Charva. In Malayazu Charvazu, And Malay Zu Charbezu, of Nachman Yitzchak Amar from the pasuk in Toldos, my Bar Mitzvah parsha, will oim eloim yamatz, but one will be stronger, the other one won't be. So Edom, Sisera being the Esav, and of course there's Yerushalayim being the Jews. Okay, another thing about Edom, Amar Yitzchak, my Dechsiv, Yuchan Rasha Bal Lomat Tzedek. This is a fascinating conversation between Yitzchak Avinu and the Rabbi Shalom regarding Esav. Esav was his son, the fascinating conversation. What does he say? Yuchan Rasha Bal Lomet Tzedek. Go ahead and show Yuchan, show Chaim to a Rasha, Bal Lomet Tzedek, right? So that he won't learn to be what? To be a tzaddik. What does that mean? Rabbi Shalom. Yuchan Esav, show favor to Esav. Amaloi Rashahu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can show favor to Rasha. Amaloi Bal Lomet Tzedek. He said he didn't learn he didn't learn otherwise. Meaning there's nothing good about him. The Mefarshim say he was mechaber his father. There was no one in Kedushin said there was no one who was mechaber his father like Esav. So it says Yitzchak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let the schus of kivud of aim be, so Amaloi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said the bottom line is be'eres nechachas yavel. In the land, he's going to go ahead and what is he going to do? He's going to destroy Yerushalayim. So it shows that he doesn't care about his father. That's the underlying current over here. He doesn't care about his father, Kivud Avim. He's going to destroy his father. Amaloyim Cain, Ubal Yero Geas Hashem. He shouldn't see the majesty of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I'm fascinating. Rabbi Yitzchak Maidich Siv, Al Titein Hashem, May Oivai Rosh Zemamai Al Tafik Yeroim Musela. Okay, what does that mean? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, Al Titein LeEsav HaRasha Taivas Liba. Don't let Esav, don't let him go ahead and fulfill the desires of his heart. Zamamoy Al Tafik. Don't remove the ring from him. Don't remove, meaning keep Esav in control. Amid Beis, guys, Zu Gormamia Shel Edom. This is Gormamia of Edom. Shemalei Hein Yotzin Machrivin Kalayim Kulay. If Gormamia would go out, they would destroy the whole world. If Gormamia would go out, they would destroy the whole world. This is the lashon. This is the lashon of the Yavitz guys. The Yavitz is you have Yaakov Emden. It's the back of the Gemara, and it's on this Rashi. Tiber Masal Gemam Yasham Ner Be'enai Kimeduma Ratzalaymar Gormanya He Ashkenaz Shalonu. It's not Gormamya. It's like Gormam with a mem. It's Gormanya with a dud. Now read it, guys. Germany. Read it. Look at there. Germany. It's Ashkenaz. That's Germany. Ashkenaz is Germany. Says the Yavitz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yitzchak Avinu davened. He davened that the nose ring should be held on the Germans. Because if the Germans came out, guess what would happen? Lo Yoleinu. And we know it all too well. That look what happened. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed it, and they destroyed the world. They mamished almost. It's unbelievable how. It's unbelievable. I find this Gemara so fascinating. So fascinating. It's really interesting. I just looked at it for a second that's really boring, so I didn't get the chance to listen. But I saw he had Purim Fest 1946. In Munich, they had the Munich trials. And they had a lot of head Nazis that they had caught, and they brought them to trial. One of the Nazis, few of them got off the hook, but most of them were hung. One of the Nazis was hung was one of the Yamach Shemoy named Julius Streicher. Julius Streicher he would put out the paper, their Struma. He was in charge of propaganda, and he was in charge of all the horrible pictures of depicting Jews with long noses, and all the pictures that he was hung. As he was hung at Purim Fest 1946. That's what he called out. Purim Fest, 1946. 11 sons. How many sons did Haman have? How many hung that day? 11 sons. Fascinating. Unbelievable. So this is Germania.
Yeah. You spoke out, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did speak this out about, not last time, but the time before, that you said that they wanted to destroy the world. And by Germany wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael, destroy Torah. There'd be no Torah, and that's how they would destroy the world. Is that what you remember that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the world, right? That's how they conquer the world.
The
The
world
whole
end.
world, again, I quoted this pasuk a million times. The Bereshis Bara Elokim es hashamayim va'aretz does not mean in the beginning Hashem created the world. If you look at Rashi says clearly, Bereshis, Bishvil Yisrael Shenikra Reshis Ona Tfuasoi, Bishvil Torah Shenikra Reshis Darkoi, Bara Elokim es hashamayim va'aretz. The world was created for Torah and Bnei Yisrael. If Bnei Yisrael were not around to keep Torah, then they would be destroyed. They would. Thank you for reminding me, Benji. But that's that. No, that's the. Even if the Germans would have conquered the world and the world would exist, it wouldn't exist because if they killed all the Jews, there would be no Torah. There'd be no Torah. There'd be no world. But again, I find it so poignant. It's amazing, like the lashon and the change of the lashon. And not only I found it in the Gra also. The Gra also. Art School quotes the Gra also says it's Germany. Also says it's Germany. He also says it's Germany. And the Malbim says the Germans are Amalek. He says in Mefurish, the Malbim says the Germans are Amalek. I mean, you don't have to go out on a limb. It's not such a chiddush, but it's unbelievable that the truth, the ultimate truth, and the timeless of the Torah is something that's it's impressive. 300 princes in Germania of Edom, with the 365 chiefs in Rome. They meet each other, right? One of them is killed. They try to get a new king. This is above my pay grade. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, again, it's something very esoteric. If a person tells you, if someone tells you, listen, I learned, but I was not matzliach. I learned, I worked hard. I didn't find atzlacha. Al Talmud, don't believe him. Lo yagati, I didn't work. Umatzasi, and I did find something. Al Talmud, don't believe him. Yagati, I worked hard. Umatzasi, then Tamin, then believe him. Right. So listen, this is such like a shmaka shot. Listen to this. Listen to this kasha. There's a seifa. L'chayra, it says the following: Yagati, I worked. V'loy matzasi, I didn't find. Guys, the etymology, right, of Yagati, I worked, means I'm working towards a goal. V'loy matzati, but I didn't find. Finding l'chora has nothing to do with work. Finding means I walked along the street and there it was, right? I didn't work at it. It just happened to be there. So it seems to be something that is very conflicting. In other words, Yagati means I worked at something and to get a goal, and I didn't find. What do you mean you didn't find? Of course you didn't find. Finding is nothing to do with, it has nothing to do with your gear. Conversely, you could say, I didn't work and I did find. That also makes sense, right? Don't believe him. So listen to this wonderful pshat. Sometimes a person works very hard at something and it doesn't make any sense. You're working, learning. It doesn't make any sense. You're working, and you think you don't have pshat. And then all of a sudden, you get something pounds into your head, just like a mitzvah, just like all of a sudden, if you found it, right? But it's not pshat, I found it. Your hard work got you to the point. It appears as if you found it, but your hard work got you to the point. I told the story more than once. This is a fascinating story. I heard this from Rabbi Hillel Ruvel. Rabbi Hillel Ruvel was very close to Rabbi Abramsky, Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky. Cheskel Abramsky was nifted in 1976. When he was nifted, Rav Gustman said on him, he didn't leave anyone like him. He held him to God Ladar. He held him bigger than Rav Moshe Feinstein, which is unbelievable. So I'm just giving you I'm giving you an idea of who he was. He escaped. He was imprisoned by the communists. He was a rav in a town in Europe called Slutsk. He ended up being known as Dayan Abramsky in London. He was for many, many years the head of the whole Bezdin in London. Right? I recall a story that he was sworn in the House of Lords or something. He was think about a British court with the judge wearing a white wig, and he asked him, what do you do for a living? So he goes, I'm one of the leading Talmudists of this generation. So the judge looked at him and goes, I know something about Judaism. And he goes, and you're supposed to be humble. So he goes, I'm under oath. We have to give him an idea of where Abramsky is. I'm on the road. Anyway, Rabbi Abramsky was learning. He put out a sefer called Chazon Yecheskel on Tosefta. He was learning Tosefta on Bab Mitzia. He said, Hillel, I remember the Lashon Yiddish. Hillel said, "Ich hab nicht verstanden proste pshat in Tosefta." I didn't know very proste pshat in Tosefta. I didn't know even basic pshat what the Tosefta was talking about. Nothing. He said, I couldn't sleep for days, and it was bothering me so, and I got such a headache. I decided to go ahead and take a rest. So I guess he went on a ferry on the Thames River in London, and he had along what's known as a Shas Yonasan. A Shas Yonasan has the Shas Babli in front, and in the back it has Shas Yerushalmi. So he said he was sitting there on the deck in Thames with the Shas, and all of a sudden a wind came and it blew the pages, and he ended up in the Yerushalmi. And he took a look at the Yerushalmi, and from that Yerushalmi he was able to understand Pshat and Tosefta. So he used to say, you think it's a big deal to be Cheskel Abramsky? Anyone can be Cheskel Abramsky, right? Pshat is, but you see, that's mamish this Pshat over here. Yogati, if you worked at something and it says Mitzasi, no. Mitzasi, Taka found it, but it appears as if what? It appears all of a sudden as if you found it, but it only found it because he couldn't sleep for days and days and days. And then it appears to be found. I think a very nice interpretation. Again, it's very, very famous Gemara, famous line of Rabbi Yitzchak of if Al Talmud, don't believe a person who says he worked at something, he didn't work at something. Says the Gemara Vaita. Hani mili b'divrei Torah. Alva b'masu umatim. When it comes to business, siyata d'shmaya, right? Siyata d'shmaya. You need in business. It's all siyata d'shmaya. In learning, you have to work. Business also. Benji always told me a story about this person, this hardware guy he worked for, had no idea about inventory. He had no idea he couldn't find anything, nothing. No matter how hard he tried to mess up his business, it didn't make a difference. He was making money hand over fist. But it's the Yad Shmaya, it doesn't make a difference. You all know stories about people like that. Right? And Hani Mila b'Divrei Torah, Aval b'Siyat Matter. Well, Divrei Torah lo yamarin el l'chududei. This is what we said about it, meaning only to understand Torah. Aval look me girsa, to remember your learning Siyat Shmaya. Aside from you need Siyat Shmaya. To remember your learning, fellas, you need Siyat Shmaya. You should daven for Siyat Shmaya. From Rabbi Yitzchak, another teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, and where you see Russia, if you see a Russia that fortune is shining upon him, al tiskar b'am. Don't shepherd with him. Don't contend with him. Shneimar says al tiskar b'merayim. Don't go ahead and deal with people who are rishayim. They'll be successful in everything they do. Shneimar yochilu drachav b'choles. He's successful in all his ways. They go to court with them. They'll be zoich in din. Shneimar moroi mishpatecha minegdoi. Your judgments are removed from him. In other words, you're not going to be judged. He'll see his enemies' downfall. All his enemies, he blows at them and they go away. So you see that you shouldn't contend with the Russia when the shore is misachets by. Is it true that you shouldn't contend with the Russia? You can go ahead and shepherd with Rishayim in this world. Those people who keep Torah Yiskarim, that means they will shepherd with them. You could shepherd with them. A person says to you, don't go ahead with the previous pasuk. We say, only someone who's scared. Don't go ahead and shepherd with them to be like them. Don't be envious of them. Like them. Don't let your heart envy them. The bottom line is you got a kasha. First one said, the first bite of Rabbi Yitzchak says you shouldn't shepherd with them. Second bite says you should. Like kasha, have a miladi day. If it's a personal thing, have a miladi shmaya. If it's a personal thing, don't contend with them. Leave them alone, especially if the sun is shining upon them. Conversely, if it's a miladi shmaya, if it's something that has to do with shmaya, then what? Then you could. Then you could shepherd with them. Be by sema, have a miladi day. It depends upon the individual, right? It's not miladi shmaya. Like kasha, have it tzadikama. So Habit Sadik Einagama. If you're at Sadigama, you have nothing to worry about. We discussed at Sadigama in the previous Masechta. Rabbi Rachana was at Sadigama. Therefore, Rav Huna put him in the house to clear out the wine. You know, if to worry about it falling in, and it's chustim because he was a tzaddik gama. We saw him Mashah there. So to over here is a tzaddik gama, he can shepa. But if you're not a tzaddik gama, don't shepa. Don't start up with them. When every dog has his day, I think is the saying. So every dog has its day, right? So if the Rosh is having his day, stay away. Dam Rav Huna, my dechsiv lama tabit boig lama tagda boigdim takrish bebala Rosh tzaddik mimenu baleya. Someone that's tzaddik mimenu, he can go ahead and the Rosh can swallow up. Tzaddik gama, however, tzaddik gama any baleya cannot be. So we have two terutzim. One shepherding is speaking about your own self. One is speaking about you could shepherd mila shemayim. Another one they're both speaking about yourself. It depends whether you're tzaddik gama or not. A third pshat. This is what I would have answered. When the sun is shining upon him, then don't shepherd with him. When the sun is not shining upon him, then you could shepherd with him. Amar Ula, let's finish up this agadata. Italia shel Yavan zekrach gadol shel Roimi. The Italy of Yavan. This is the city of Rome. Look at Rashi. Rashi tells you how the city of Rome came about, guys. Italia shel Yavan, krach gadol shegadol b'shvil of Menashe. It came about as a result of the chait of Menashe. Shebishor shehichnes slem behechel. When Menashe brought in an idol into the hechel, Yored Gavriel came down. The noyatz kana biyam. He stuck a reed into the sea. The gidol of chelka, and you know what happened to this reed? Sirtun, different sediment, began to go ahead and cling to it, and over time it became an island. And chalaka gedola v'nivna l'sham Italia shel Yavan. That's what that was. Rome was built. Okay, that's how Rome came about. In other words, Rome came about as a result of the chait of Menashe. Back in the Gemara, how big was Rome? Parsa. It was 300 parsa by 300 parsa. Again, a parsa is 4 mil, which is 8,000 amas, which is 16,000 feet. It had 365 marketplaces. Like the days of the solar year. The cotton shebekula and shalmachri office would sell birds. That itself is 16 mil by 16 mil. That was the same size as Sipurei. That's why these measurements I feel are always they're always guzmis, because you get the same amount. We split Sipurei was 16 by 16. Here we're saying 16 by 16. We know 300 is a guzma. It's just giving you an idea of size. Esoterically, there's always a deeper meaning why they give these size, but usually these size, I would say for the record, are guzmas. They are what's the word in English? A guzma?
Example?
Exaggeration. Exaggeration. A melech would go ahead and eat every day of the year in a different marketplace. If someone lived in the city, even if he wasn't born there, he would get some handout from the king. If someone was born there, if he didn't live there, he could also get a stipend. There were 3,000 bathhouses in the city. There were 500 windows giving smoke up. And on one side of the city, Sidam was a sea. One side was mountains. Was an iron. Was a bunch of chulsis, was type of swamp, something swampy, pebbly area. That was the city right of Rome. That was the city of Rome, and the Gemara is describing how great Rome is. Certainly, what's waiting for us is much better. Okay, let's get back to the barn. We begin a sugya of Ein Bain, right? Adar. Now, in those days, we have a calendar. We know this year is going to be in Ibiyar. No question about it. We know if Rosh Chodesh was in September 4th. We know if Hanukkah was in November, we're going to have a leap year. No question about it. In other words, we're going to have two Adars. In those years, it wasn't so clear. They would go ahead and they would Mekadesh al Yedei Levana. So Ken Zayin, you got to Yud Adar. You read the Megillah. You kept Purim, and lo and behold, what did they say? Guess what? There's another Adar this year. Question: are you Yoitza Mekriyas Megillah in the first Adar, or no? You're not Yoitza, and you have to lay in the second Adar. So that's the discussion of the Mishnah and the following Gemara. Says the Mishnah. Karu es Megillah ba'Adar Rishon v'nis Abra Hashana. You read the Megillah in the first Adar, and then this Abra Hashana became an Ibiyar, became a leap year. Then Karu Noisa ba'Adar Sheni. You have to read it in Adar Sheni, and now we get the statement that's going to go ahead and create digressions of digressions. Ein bein Ada Rishon la'Ada Sheni el Kriyas Megillah u'Matanis Lavyonim. The only difference between Ada Rishon and Ada Sheni that both Megillah and Matanis Lavyonim are not in Ada Sheni. Ada Rishon, they're only in what? Ada Sheni. If you do them in Ada Rishon, you're not Yaitza. Ein bein Kriyas Megillah Matanis Lavyonim, then Yaitza. Now it's very geschmack. We said, why do the people give out if they laid on Yud Aleph and Yud Beis? They give Matanis Lavyonim because Rabbi Yosef said the Aniyim look forward the whole year to that day. They know that day if anyone sticks his hand out, it's going to be answered and given. So of course we have linked together Kriyas Megillah with Matanis Lavyonim. So Memela, if you're going to read the Megillah in Adasheni, of course Matanis Lavyonim is going to be along with Kriyas Megillah because they're linked together. Says the Gemara, say the Pashiyos. Now we know every year we're going to lay Mat Pasha Shkolim. By Shchodesh Ada, we're going to lay in Pasha Shkolim, followed by the one before Purim, the week before Purim, we're going to lay in Pasha Zacha. Then follows by Pasha Para, that we should be cleansed from Tumas Meis to go ahead, Pasha Chodesh before Pesach. So L'chaira, if you lay in the 4 Pashiyos, right? Do you have to lay them again? We only discussed Kriyas Megillah. We only discussed Matanos Lavyonim. What about what? The 4 you started with Chodesh Ada, you laid the Shkolim and followed by the other 4. So says the Gemara, holy and say the Pashiyos Shavin. They're both equal, right? They're both equal. That what? That if you read it in the Rishon, you don't have to go ahead and read it in the Sheni. If I read it in Ada Rishon, I don't have to read it in Ada Sheni. Says the Gemara, Maslis Mani, who's the Tan of our Mishnah? Now we're going to have 3 opinions. Loi Tanakama, V'loi Reb Eliezer, Reb Yossi, V'loi Reb Shimon Gamliel. We didn't meet them yet. We'll meet them in a second, but it can be neither one of these 3. I didn't have time to make a chart, but this would be a good thing to chart out. Maybe I'll post something tomorrow. So now, Tanakama cannot be the Tan of our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer, Reb Yossi cannot be the Tan of our Mishnah, nor can Reb Shimon Gamliel be the Tan of our Mishnah. The Tanya. Karu es ha-Megillah be'ada Rishon. You lay in the Megillah in Ada Rishon, V'nis Abra Hashana, and now you made it a leap year. Kayu Nesa ba'Ada Sheni. You read it in Ada Sheni. Why? Shekol mitzvah sheneheges b'Sheni neheges b'Rishon. Anything that you do in the first is in the second. Chutz mi mikra Megillah, with the exception of laying the Megillah. Now, guys, why can't the Tanakama be the Tan of a Mishnah? You have a chart there, Baruch? Huh?
It's a personal chart I made last time.
Okay. So now, why can't the Tanakama be the Tan of a Mishnah? Because according to him, he doesn't mention anything about Matanis Lavyonim. According to him, you could be Yotzei Matanis Lavyonim. He doesn't say anything about, right? He just says about Megillah, you can lay in both. But what about Matanis Lavyonim? Pashtus, you don't have to. Rabbi Eliezer Yossi says, "Ein kaim neisa ba'ada sheni." You don't have to lay in another sheni. Shekol mitzvah sheneheges b'sheni neheges b'rishon. So therefore, he can't be the Tan of our Mishnah because he would say you don't have to repeat it. Once you laid it in the first, you don't have to lay it in the second. So the Tanakama can't be the Tana because of Matanas Lavyonim, and Rabbi Yossi, he can't be the Tana because he says you don't have to lay it in the second, and our Mishnah clearly says you do. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Aimer, Yishum Rabbi Yossi, Af Chayim Neisa ba'Ada Sheni. You do even later in Ada Sheni. Shekol mitzvah shein heges b'sheni ein heges b'rishon. Any mitzvahs that are noig in the second are not noig in the rishon. V'shavim behesped b'tainis that you can't be maspid in either one. Shashun zebezeh the asa. It's asa to have a eulogy or a tainis in Yudalat Tesvav Ada Rishon and Yudalat Tesvav Sheni. Now, why can't he be the Tan of a Mishnah? L'chari, he's saying the exact same thing as the Tanakama. Fred the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Hainu Tanakama, says the Gemara, Amar Papa, say the Parshiyas Ikbinayo, whether you have to relay in the 4 Parshiyas. The Tanakama Sava, L'chatchila B'Sheni, L'chatchila, you should lay it in the second. The Ovid B'Rishon, Ovid, you don't have, right? You don't have to relay it. Bami Mikra Megillah. The Afal Gav, the Kari Rishon, Kari B'Sheni. So in other words, our Mishnah seemed to say that you do not have to relay it, right? You don't that Le'inyan relaying, you don't have to relay it. Rabbi Eliezer B'Shimon, he seems to say that what? That you do it, the Afal Gav, the Kari Rishon, Kari B'Sheni. He says you would have to relay the Seder Parshiyos, guys. You would have to relane it. Rabbi Lazar Yossi Sava, Afilu Mikra Megillah Chatchila Berishain, right? El Chatchila Berishain. So he can't be the Tana of Mishnah. So one more time. Rabbi Lazar, the Tana Kama can't be the Tana of Mishnah. Why? Because he would say you would have to relane the 4 Parshiyos, and our Tana says you don't. Rabbi Lazar of Shimon can't be the Tana of the Mishnah because he says you don't have to relane the Megillah, and our Tana says you do have to relane the Megillah. One more stab at it. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar, Afilu say the Parshiyos, Ikar Berisha and Ikar B'Sheni. You have to repeat. That's the difference between him and the Tana Kama. So Memelovat, money, Tana Kama, Koshem Atonis. If it's a Tana Kama, you have a problem, not the Parshiyos, because you won't have to repeat it. The Parsha is Matanas of Yainim, which he says you would have to give. He says you would not have to give if you gave it in the first. Because you don't have to relane. Because he says you do have to repeat, and Atana says you don't have to repeat. Says Tanakama. It's a Tanakama. The Tanakama was problematic. Matanos. Says the Tana Mikra Megilah Vuadin Matanos Lev Yoinim. When it says Mikra Megilah, it meant Matanos Lev Yoinim. The Haba Hatalia. Guys, very geschmack. It was unnecessary to state Matanos Lev Yoinim because we have them linked together. They're linked together by virtue that the Aniyim are looking forward to the Megillah. So therefore, when the Tanakama says you have to repeat the Megillah, of course you have to give Matanos Lev Yoinim. So he's the Tana of Mishnah. He didn't mention Matanos Lev Yoinim. It was unnecessary because they're ultimately linked together. Viba is saying another possibility. Loilam Shimon Gamliel he. Reb Shimon Gamliel was a problem of repeating the Parshiyos. Umasnisan Chasuri Mechsera. The Mishnah is missing words. Ein bein arba asa shebe adar rishain. There's no difference between the 14th day of Adar Rishain, liyedalit shebe Adar Sheni, to the 14 days of Adar Sheni. Ela mikra Megillah umatanos. Right? That if you give mikra Megillah matanos Adar Rishain, it doesn't count. You have to re-give them an Adar Sheni. I hala inyan hesped v'tainis zev as shavim. Inyan hesped v'tainis, they're the same. You can't have a hesped or a tainis, neither one you dalit. V'yilu say the Parshiyos le'mayri. And you know what? We're only speaking about the Purim Dikadin. We're not speaking about the Parshiyos Dikadin. Right? The Parshiyos Dikadin, we're not speaking about, which would make sense. In other words, the din of Matanos Lev Yoinim has to do with Yedalid. The din of Mikra Megillah has to do with Yedalid. The din of Tainus has to do with Yedalid. The din of Hesped has to do with Yedalid. Say the Parshiyos are that time of the year in Adar, but they're not intrinsically linked to the 14th day. Memela, you assumed that we're discussing that. We're not discussing that at all. And very good. So now you have a problem. Who's the Tana of our Mishnah? It could be the Tanakama. The Tanakama dimension of Matanos, unnecessary, automatically linked, fact, Lane Megillah, Matanos. It has to be, if you have to relane the Megillah like the Tanakama says, like our Mishnah says, Memela, you have to give Matanos Lev Yoinim because the Aniyim are looking forward to that. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says you have to relane it, very good. Matanos you have to give, very good. Everything is good until you get to say the Parshiyos that you have to repeat it. Say the Parshiyos. No. We're not discussing. Good, repeat all you want. We're not discussing say the Parshiyos. Why not? Because there's nothing to do with your Dalit. So very good. So now we have two possibilities as to who the Tana of our Mishnah is.
How about Shloch Manos?
Again, it's 7:30. Amar Chia bar Rabin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hilchasa, the halacha is Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Shamar B'Shum Reb Yaisi, who says what in the name of Reb Yaisi, right? That they say the name of Reb Yaisi. Say now that which means that what the halacha is like him, that you say the Megillah over again, and you would say the Parshiyos over again, and you would say give Matanos. That's the halacha. Hesh, what's the question?
It was mentioned Shalach Manis, Matanos Lev Yoinim.
That's simcha. If you give him Shalach Manis on the first one, again, once there's made simcha, you can give Shalach Manis again. But you yaitz Shalach Manis, I don't know. I think it's a machlokes Rishonim I saw. Okay, I think we'll stop over here. We'll see the time tomorrow. I thank everyone for listening. Everyone, a good tavach to everybody.
Cool.